Jason Clare out there saying, that that chant from the river to the sea meant different things to different people. Well, I mean, that's as weak as water. Josh Frydenberg, well, he picked up this particular issue in his upcoming Sky documentary. Here's a little of what he's uncovered. Have a listen.
The genocide to the sea, which calls for the effective destruction of Israel as a Jewish state. Do you see that as a statement inciting violence?
It's a very violent statement. There are sections of the Australian community who do see people of the Jewish faith, wherever they are around the world, as part of Israel. Therefore, statements of violence against Israel can very easily flow over into actions of violence against communities in our own country.
On the issue of the river to the sea, Dennis Richardson again described it as an extremely violent statement.
It is.
And so it has no place on our streets.
I agree.
Okay, we hear the PM say that. He certainly rebuked his minister, Jason Clare, yesterday, but he's only rebuking him now. He hasn't been rebuking him or anyone else about that statement since October, since it all started to come to a head. And I think, you know, the political strategist in me looks at what Clare's doing. His seat's got 30% Muslim vote. Perhaps he's given some licence here, Chris, to throw some sort of grey around that statement and allow it to be said. I mean, you can't get a better authority than Dennis Richardson, former ASIO boss, who says it's a violent statement. I mean, Clare's not ignorant. He knows exactly what he's saying.
Oh, I think absolutely. And I think the Prime Minister sees the political gravity around him falling in the direction of Palestine. And think about it, the closest numbers that matter to the Prime Minister are the Labor caucus. Now, I think it's a fairly strong bet that the majority of the left in Labor's caucus certainly support Palestine. We know the New South Wales right supports Palestine, the Queensland right supports Palestine. So the numbers underneath the Prime Minister supporting the Prime Minister on what he should do on Israel would be falling away from him. And then, of course, they look at the electorates in Western Sydney where there's that large Muslim majority in some places. And, of course, they are in hand-to-hand combat with the Greens in the inner city for that vote on the pro-Palestinian question. And I'll put this to you, Peter, because this is a really serious question. On Friday, the UN is scheduled to vote on admitting Palestine as a full member state. How will the Labor Party vote? That is an active question inside the government at the moment. Don't forget, it was Australia that voted first for the partition of Palestine, for the creation of the State of Israel, and it was Doc Evatt that led the charge on that. It was the Labor Party. So if things change, it will be a significant change come Friday.
Well, we'll see if those comments from Penny Wong a little earlier in the month were about sort of putting some burley in the water to see what would happen. Don't forget, of course, people at home, you can watch Josh Frydenberg's documentary, Never Again, The Fight Against Anti-Semitism, on Tuesday, the 28th, so after the budget week at 7 o'clock. Let's go to that Chinese incident. You're a bit of a sinophile here, an expert for us, Chris Uhlmann. We've just got into the newsroom some comments from China's foreign ministry. They've spoken about the incident. In fact, they've blamed Australia. Have a listen.
What truly happened was an Australian military aircraft deliberately flew within close range of China's airspace in a provocative move that endangers China's maritime and air security. The situation was handled was consistent with our law and regulations, professional and safe. China has lodged serious protests to the Australian side on its risky moves. We urge Australia to immediately stop the provocations and hypes to prevent misunderstanding and miscalculation.
So we were provocative and we were clearly not in international space. We were in their zone. How credible is that?
Oh, well, it's as credible as what we usually hear out of that ministry, but at least it's strong. I don't think that what we've heard out of the Australian government is strong at all. What have they said? That it's unprofessional? No, it's an act of hostility committed in international waters, which endangered yet again the lives of our servicemen and women. And it's not good enough that we simply say that this is an unprofessional action. And I heard you talk about this earlier, Peter, and you're a little bit incredulous about the way this unfolded. Let me tell you, Andrew Probyn got that story. He didn't get it from Richard Marles. He contacted Richard Marles. So Channel 9 journalists contacted Richard Marles and asked for a comment. I wonder, given that this happened on Saturday, whether the government was intending to comment at all until it was fronted by a journalist.
And what about the Prime Minister then scooting off to Beef Week, not handling a press conference with the Canberra Gallery on something as significant and repeated as this?
Yes, Peter, and we spoke just a little while ago too about something else that's happening inside Australia's borders, and that is that China is pre-positioning virtual bombs on our critical infrastructure. Now, Li Cheng arrives in Australia in June. I would have thought that a government that says that we'll cooperate where we will and disagree where we must be getting a fairly long list now of points of disagreement that are reasonably serious before we can start talking about what kind of cooperation that we can have with China, because this isn't the action and these aren't the actions of a friendly nation. These are the actions of a hostile nation. And I can't for the life of me see what we've really won in the new settlement with China beyond that they've bought our silence for most of the time.
And a bit of wine and a few lobsters, but we've got ourselves in a lot of trouble here, Chris Uhlmann. Thank you as always. See you next week.